First, configuring the project server for allowing the collaboration over multiple users. Then we'll connect one of the AS clients to the project server. Third, we'll be managing the permissions of the project so that we can give restricted access to different users. And finally, I'll showcase a specific case where we're going to have multiple users working on the same project at the same time. So what is collaboration? On a technical point of view, it's basically you have multiple users that normally will be running each one a different instance of Automation Studio, and each one will be working on their own end. In order to be sharing a project, they will have to save the project, close it, then give the project to the other users so they can start working on it. With the collaboration module now, you have a new entity called a project server, which will be managing the different user accounts so that multiple users can connect to a single project. And it will also help synchronize the different operations that will be happening on the project. For instance, if user 1 and user 2 try to save to the project at the same time, the project server will synchronize the operations so that the two will not be writing at the same time to the project file and corrupting the file. So in other words, what this allows you to do is to have different users who are not necessarily from the same company, not necessarily working from the same place, to work on a single project file. Also, you can have somebody who's working for a different enterprise, have their own license server and their own collaboration license, connect to your project server and be able to partake in the development of your project while being restricted over which documents you can be viewing and editing. So now we'll be going to see how we configure the project server by creating accounts on it. I have prepared for this presentation 2 virtual machines. The first one is the project server machine that I'll be logging into now. So I'll be logging into my account. What you see right now is the main window that you get when you use the installation DVD for Automation Studio. You can install the project server in 2 different ways. One is from the DVD. You go into the Administrator tab over here. And then you click on the Install the Project Server button. In my case, I have already installed the project server on this computer, so I do not need to do this. The other way to install it is to download the project server program from our website. It will be in a zip file. You can uncompress it on your computer, then execute the setup file within the folder. Now I'll be accessing the project server's access right management program. When you install it, by default, it will be in All Programs, Automation Studio 6.0, and the program is called Project Server Access Right Management. So I'll click on this. The first time you log into the program, you will have to provide the default administrator account information, which is administrator as the username, and the password is admin. Then you click on the sign in button. I highly suggest that the first time you use this program that you go into the administrator account over here and change the password to something more secure. So as you can see, I've already created different accounts for this project server. Right after installation, you only have the administrator and anonymous accounts. In my case, I created an account for application administrator, which is an account for someone who actually manages the options and the standards used by your enterprise over all your different projects. I have an account called Project Manager, which is working on managing a single project. Then I have created 3 users for 3 different types of documents in the project I'll be using during this seminar. Elec user, which is an electrotechnic user, hydraulic user, and an SFC user. If I go into details of the SFC user, you'll see that there is not a lot of information needed to provide to create a user account. Basically, in order to authenticate himself, the user needs to have a username and a password. The other information that you need to input is a description over here, an email for the username, but those are not critical information. So with the user, the only information that the user needs in order to be able to start using Automation Studio with the project server is basically his username and his password. However, you can also create a type of account that is not user and password, but rather Windows domain user, in which case you can, instead of creating a username, you can select an account name that is already defined on your Windows domain. In such a case, when the user will be using the Automation Studio client to connect to the server, the client will automatically send the authentication information already gathered within the Windows session in order to authenticate to the project server. So in such a case, the user does not have to provide a password. Now I will go into more depth with the profile. At the creation of, at the installation rather of your project server, there will be only the all users profile defined. If I double click on it, I will see that I cannot change the list on the right. All the users that are defined on the project server will automatically be added to this profile. So depending on what you want to do with the different accounts, you can either leave the granted option over here for the two permissions that are application-wide for Automation Studio, which is the ability to change the options within Automation Studio, for instance, where the default project templates are located, and to be able to transfer or change the standards, types, and living rules that are defined on the enterprise level for Automation Studio. In my case, since I created a separate profile for the administrators, I have instead decided to leave this, these two permissions to undefined. So basically, if you want to create an account, what you want to do is go into User Accounts here, then click on the Add button at the top over here. I will showcase to you how to create a Windows Domain User account. So I go into the type list here, and I select Windows Domain User. After which I can go into the search button over here. And you can use this window, which is standard to Windows, to find the account that you want to add. In my case, I will use my personal account. So click on OK. And automatically, all the information about my Windows account are being filled in over here. Since it's a Windows domain user, I do not need to input a password over here. So I'll just click on Apply. And I have a message that says that the operation has been completed successfully. So I'll click on OK. And I return to the user's account list. And I can see that my new account has been added to the list, that it does not have administration rights to be able to access this application over here. Only the administrator account right now and the application administrator account are able to open this window on the project server. So that concludes everything that we need to do on the server side. So I will be exiting this virtual machine. And I will be going on into the Automation Studio session I have running on this computer. So I have already opened Automation Studio on a local account using the server mode that is usually used when you start up Automation Studio for the first time. So I'll open a project which I'm going to be using for this presentation called Webinar. This project has limited permissions for different accounts. So I'll be opening this project, and it will be opened with very limited permissions, as when I'm working on a local level, the only account I can use is the anonymous account. As you can see, right now I have different icons on the left of the different diagrams over here. So I got the 2 technical diagrams that are presently closed as they are grayed out. This one, I'm not allowed to read nor write the diagram. So if I try to double click on it, I get a message saying that the permission to open the document is refused. Same thing with the SSC document. I am not able to open this document either. However, this document I am able to read, but not to write. So if I double click on it, it's done. I think I must have forgotten to reinstate a permission to view the different views of the document. Currently, I cannot open the document. So at least I am able to view this hydraulic document here. And since it is also read-only, I try to move a component on this schematic. I'll get a message added to my message explorer over here saying that I have missing rights to change that's not the right message. That's for being unable to open the document. But if I go a bit lower, I actually extend the window a bit. We'll say that I cannot edit this document because I do not have the sufficient access rights. I will need to have write permissions on this document to be able to modify it. If I double click on the component to see its properties, it will say that I do not have the right to view the component's properties either. That comes from the different permission that we'll be seeing later on. So basically, I have heavily restricted access to this project for any account that is anonymous or an account that is not defined in this project. This is the equivalent of securing your project so that if you distribute your project to customers, they can only see the documents you want them to see. So in order to be able to do more with this project, I'll first have to close Automation Studio. Actually, no, I will have to manage permissions first in order to be able to connect to this project on other accounts. So I click on the tools tab at the top, and I can click on connection profiles here. So here I see the list of different accounts that I've configured in different connection profiles. So the local one simply uses the local host server, which is pretty much this computer. While the other ones are going to be connected to a project server that I call VMVV 2008 R2X64. So the same accounts I've configured earlier, that I've shown you earlier in the project server, are configured here as connection profiles. If I double click on the SFC user one, it will open this window, which allows me to create a connection for both the license server as well as the project server on the left. So right now, I am using a license server that is within our network. Whereas for the project server, when I will be using this account, I'll be connected to the server that's specified here. You can either specify the name of the server by name, or if you do not have the name of the server within your local network, for instance, you're trying to connect through the internet, you can also specify the IP address of your server. Down here, we have the authentication mode that we have selected. In this case, it is username and password using the SSC username. And in order to save me time, I've already entered the password here ahead of time. I can also select the Windows domain user mode, and it will automatically fill in my username over here. But since I want to still be using the original account I've configured here, I'll just reinstate the SSC user account. So I will accept the changes here too. And then I will close this window so that I can log back on Automation Studio with a different connection profile. So all I have to do is restart Automation Studio. And since we want to be able to manage the permissions of the project, I need an account that actually has access to the project's permission. I have got access to those three accounts, the three user types of accounts. However, Project Manager has the right that I need, so I will select it. As you can see right now, it is highlighted in blue. And I will click on the check button over here. And now I will be opening the project that we've just opened. Now, at the bottom of the screen, you can see that we have an icon at the bottom left here. This icon means that currently I am connected to a project server. If I hover over it, it says that the project server is a remote one, and I'm actually connected to it. The name of the server is specified here to the right, and the name of the account I'm currently authentified under is right over here, which is Project Manager. So, as a project manager, I actually have full access to the project. So I can open any document I want, do any modifications I want. I will be reducing this window so that it doesn't bother us for the time being. So, in order to access the project's permissions, I need to select the project. Then I need to use the functionality in the contextual menu here called Project and Document Permissions. It is also accessible in the toolbar for the Project Explorer over here. If the button is not visible, you can use this button over here to find the Project and Document Permissions button and check it so that it is shown. It is also available in the Tools tab at the top, and the button over here, Permissions. So I'll click on this. And you'll see a window that is similar to the one that we've seen on the project server. However, instead of managing accounts on the server, I'm managing accounts that are within my project. Right now, I have added the accounts Elect User, Hydraulic User, SFC User, and Project Manager to this project. Each one has a different set of permissions, with Project Manager having all the access to all the documents and all the project permissions as well. So if I double click, for instance, on SFC User, you'll get a quick overview of the different permissions that are set over here on the right. On the left are the same information that we've seen on the project server. And at the bottom over here, we see the profiles that SFC User is currently part in, namely the All Users profile and the SFC profile. The combination of those two profiles gives me the access rights over here, mainly for the application. The user has all the rights, except the ability to change the structure of the project. This permission allows the user to add new documents to the project and delete documents from the project. Since I want the user only to change the different schematics in the project, I've removed this right. You can also click on the Select button at the top here. And you get this window that allows you to select if you want to see the permissions for the user over the project overall, or for a specific document by clicking on the document here. So I want to see, for instance, what permission he has for the hydraulics document. So I select it, then click on OK. I see over here that the information has changed to information about the hydraulic document. In the list over here, I see that the hydraulic document has access only in read and simulation, not in write for this account. So when I'll be showcasing the project with the SFC user later on, you'll see that he will not be able to change the hydraulic document. In order to add new accounts, you have to go back to the user accounts list by clicking on the button here. And you can either add manually the account like we did on the project server, or you can use the import user button over here to get some users that are defined on the project server and import them here. So I'll click on that here. And you will see that the users that were defined on the server are all defined here, including the one I have added earlier. In order to add a user, all you have to do in this window is double-click on the user, and it will be added to the list. Now the Famic tag /eFarmer account has been added to the project. If I double-click on it, you will see that this user has highly restricted access to the project, as it is only a member of all users, which is the same profile that has been used for the anonymous account earlier on. For this account, I have actually removed all the rights except the right to be able to simulate and the ability to be able to see the views of the project. So I'll close this window for now, and I'll be going to the profiles. When you create a new project, you have only the all users profile defined in this window, much like you would on the project server. In my case, again, I have created multiple profiles for the different types of users I have defined for my project. For instance, for the customer profile, if I double-click on it, you'll see that currently only anonymous is added to this profile. So as I connected to when it was authenticated as an anonymous account locally actually earlier on, this is the profile that was actually using. So again, if I go into the account permission, I have actually actively denied all those permissions here. So if my account has the customer profile and another profile that has all the access, the denied permission overrides the granted permission. So I am ensuring that customer users under the customer profile will never have those permissions. And if I go into the object permission, I have defined for this permission 2 object permissions. Basically, there's an object permission that's called allowed documents, in which I have defined documents that the customer can read, but not write to. As well, I have defined an object profile called hidden documents, which are documents that the user cannot read nor write, but I can still simulate them so that the documents he can view can still perform if some of the documents that you cannot open are needed for simulation purposes. I will go straight into the object permissions list over here by clicking on this button. And here I have all the object permissions that have been defined for the project. Originally, with any new project, you'll see there is a new document object permission that is defined. This is very important. I will double click on it to show you the details. This new document object permission allows you to have a default permission for documents that you add to your project. For instance, if I were to add new documents as the project manager, and the new documents will not be added to any object profile, then by default, the new document that will have been added will not have any forms of access. So I will not be able to read, write, nor simulate the new document. So with this new document permission, any new document added will be added to this list here and will be granted the permission that is defined here. So if I do want to restrict the access by default for new documents, I'll always define it here. Personally, I prefer to leave this permission only to the project manager and simply add the users, the documents, the proper object permissions for the right users as I add the new documents. So I will return to the object permissions list, and I will showcase you the customer hidden documents permission I have talked about earlier. So I will double click on it. So when you create a new object permission, Originally, there is nothing in the selected list, and by default, you have no defined document access rights. For this one, I want to define the document that the customer needs to be able to simulate if he wants to be able to have the project work. So I have added the two different documents here. SSC, which is needed for the hydraulic, and for the purpose of this demonstration, Electro 2, which is a black box diagram that I don't want the customer to be able to see. So I've hidden it. So here I've actually checked the button for document access simulation. I will now close this window. Actually, I will return to your account. And as you can see on the right here, you have the is admin checkbox. Right now, as I have added the eFarmer account here, right now he has the permission to change the permissions of this project. So even though he's currently restricted, he can access this window, give himself all the permissions he wants, and then return and modify the project as he pleases. I do not want myself to be able to do that with this account, so I will be removing this permission. So I click on the checkbox. I will get a warning saying that I will be modifying the admin credentials for this account. And then since I want to continue, I will click yes. And the checkbox has been removed for this account. Only Project Manager has the access right to manage the permissions right now. So now that we have all the accounts defined and configured for this project, I will showcase some collaboration. So I will be first closing this project altogether and closing the window so that I can log on to a different account. And I will be opening Automation Studio again. Another good bit of information with this window over here that I forgot to mention earlier is you have an automatic connection checkbox over here. What this does is that it will not be prompted with this window at the opening of Automation Studio. Instead, the default account that is defined by this radio button here will be selected automatically for you. So for the rest of this presentation, I'll be using the hydraulic user account for this instance of Automation Studio. So I select this account, click on the checkbox, and Automation Studio will launch with the hydraulic user permissions, the hydraulic user account. I will open the project that we have defined for this webinar. Now we see that for the hydraulic user, I have specified the following permissions. For the hydraulic document, he is able to read and write the document he pleases, as well as simulate it. However, I do not want him to be able to see the SSC document, but since it is required for the simulation, I did add the allow to simulate the document to the left. So this button over this icon over here says that I am allowed to simulate the document. However, for the two electrotechnical diagrams, the hydraulic user doesn't have any need to be able to access those documents. So he's not allowed to read, write, nor simulate this document. So in order to be able to work on multiple users, you might want to extend the Project Explorer window so that you can see who is currently working on the project. So to extend the window, you have to click on the blue arrow button at the top over here. As you can see, there are multiple columns shown in the Project Explorer now. In the read column, I see which documents the hydraulic user, myself in this instance, are currently looking at the different documents of the project. Since I have no access in reading to these three documents, my name doesn't appear in these columns. Right now, I have done nothing to this project so far, so my name is not in this column of write. It is the same reason why my name is not in the simulate column. I see also that currently I have the latest version of the project and of the document. Also, I see in the last column over here, when the project and the document has been saved for the last time. This column shows the page number for the different documents that are defined in the project. So, for my purposes, I want to be able to work on my direct documents. For instance, I want to space out my different components a bit. If I return to my Project Explorer, my name has now appeared in the right column over here, meaning that I have reserved this document for myself and nobody else can modify it until I have saved the changes. Now, I'll be launching the simulation for this document. If I try to launch a simulation on the project level, you will see that I have a message that will appear. The reason for this is that I do not have the simulation access rights for the Electro 1 document, which is the same for Electro 2. So in order to be able to simulate my documents, I actually have to go into the Simulate Selection mode over here. So I click on this. Then I need to modify my selection here to the documents which I am allowed to simulate. As you can see, by default, all the documents are selected. So I'll be unchecking Electro 1 and Electro 2. And I will click on OK to accept the changes. And if I launch the simulation now, the simulation starts normally. And surprisingly, the simulation doesn't work here, which for the purposes of this webinar is perfectly normal and expected. For now, I actually need another user to do a correction in the SFC document, which I have no access to. So I'll leave the simulation running for the time being and move to my other instance of Simulation Studio. So I'll be going to my virtual machine. So this is a second instance of Automation Studio I'll be starting with a different account. Please excuse the slowness of this. Since this is a virtual machine, the execution of the Automation Studio is a bit slower. So for this account, I want to use the SFC user to correct the document. It's equivalent of me calling Joe over the office to do the notifications to the document he's responsible for. So I've selected SFC and click on the checkbox so that Joe can modify the document. So Joe can work on other projects at the time I called him. So he can have 2-3 projects in the Project Explorer over here. And as you can see in the read and write column, since it's a new project, he has the project reserved to himself. But since we called him to help us on our project problem, we'll have him open the project webinar. So Joe, which is the SFC user in this case, sees that right now we are currently viewing the project and the hydraulic document in the webinar document. Also, we have the right reservation here for the document, and we're currently simulating these 3 documents on our side. So while we are simulating the document, Joe can go into the SFC document. So I'll double click on this. And Joe notices that this step over here is wrong. So he double clicks on it. He will correct the mistake that he has made earlier. It will close this window, save the changes. And while my other user, myself in this case, I am working on the hydraulic document, Joe can really do whatever he wants on this side on the SFC document. However, he has only read access to the hydraulic document, so even if he was allowed to, he wouldn't be able to change it. I'll showcase a case where one user blocks the access in modification to another user a bit later on. So he has completed the modification, and I will pretend that he's still working on the document, so I'll return to my instance of Automation Studio. So over here, I will stop the simulation, and I see that right now, Joe, SFC user, is in the right column. So he has changes that are uncommitted to the document. So let's ask Joe to save the document so I can actually have a working SFC for this project. So I return to Joe's station. And Joe will save the project. And since he is done, he can close Automation Studio as well. I'll return to my station. And you see that the icon over here has slightly changed, meaning that there are changes to the document that need to be refreshed. However, since this document I do not have any access in read or write, suddenly I cannot update the document. However, since I can simulate the document, when I will start the simulation, it will take into account the changes that Joe has made to the document. So I will start the simulation now. And you see that now the cylinder is actually moving back and forth as expected. I will stop the simulation, and I will perform more work on my project. For instance, I will go into the project. I will go into the properties of the project. And I will change some information. For instance, I will change the information for simulation. For instance, I'll want to have perfect lines. So I'll check this box over here. And I'll apply my changes. So now I have a reservation in the project that is solid. So now I will have another user start working on the project at the same time as me. In this instance, I'll have chat work on the electrotechnical documents. So I return to my other workstation. I will start Automation Studio, and when the connection profile window will be shown, Jack will log on the LX user account. So I select the electrotechnical connection profile, then click on the checkbox button over here, and Automation Studio will start off with this account. So I will return to Jack Station now. And I will be opening the project webinar for Jack. Now Jack has opened this project over here, and then found that I do not see information about the other user on the project. Oh, I'm sorry about this. I must have made some mistakes in configuring the profile for Jack. So I'll be logging into this project instead on a different account. So I'll be going to connection profiles over here. And instead of logging on the elect user here, I'll change the connection profile so that I log on the project manager account instead. What I have to do is change the username and the password. I will change the project name, the profile name for good measure. Then I will accept my changes. And I will be restarting Automation Studio as soon as I'm able to. So if I restart Automation Studio, I will select my project manager account over here. Click on the checkbox button. And I'll open the project webinar. So I'll pretend that I'm the electrotechnical user here, Jack. And I'll open the Electro1 document here. So as you can see in the project explorer, right now, hydraulic user is the have right reservations on both the document and the project. So if I try to do some manipulation in the electrotechnical diagram, for instance, I will add a new wire at random over here. I'm unable to do so, and it says because I cannot reserve the project. The reason for that is that the wires are saved on the project level in Automation Studio. Since the wires are spanning over different schematics, for instance, a wire on Electro 1 can continue on Electro 2. So in order to be able to work with electrotechnical diagrams, I need hydraulic user, myself, to unreserve the project. To do so, I call, Jack calls me and asks me to save my changes to the project. So I'll get back to my session. So on my end, I see that Jack currently is logged in as project manager. And I will save my project. And my name disappears from the right column over here, meaning that my changes have been committed. Now I will return to Jack's session. Now Jack sees this red icon on the icon of the document and the project that I just saved. Also, he sees that my name is no longer in the right column. That basically means that changes were made to these two documents, but these documents have not been synced with this instance of Automation Studio yet. So if I try to manipulate a wire, I'm still unable to do so. To be able to manage the wires in the electrotechnical diagram, I need to update the project. So if I go in the contextual menu of the project, I have an option called Update Project over here. The option is also available in the toolbar if I add the button over here. So if I right-click here, I can see that I have an Update Project item. I will check it. And the button is added here. I will click it. Now the project is being reloaded. And the icon here has changed to blue, meaning that I'm currently able to manipulate this project. So I can go back into the electrotechnical diagram here and manipulate a wire. And I'm allowed to do so because I have the project reservation over here. So this concludes the part on the collaboration. Basically, what collaboration allows you to do is to create a project with a lot of documents and be able to give a small portion of the project to different people to work on. If there are conflicts, like in the case of the electrotechnical diagram, all you have to do is to call the person who has the reservation that is in conflict, ask them to save their changes. Then you can update the information and do your own changes, which is much better than actually having only one person work on the project at a time, than transferring the project from person to person, or to have different smaller projects being defined and then having to merge the changes into a larger project. So since I've concluded this seminar, we are entering now the question period. So I'll be allowing Noel to join us into the chat.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Noel, and I'm the moderator. If you have any questions, at any time, feel free to call us. Our technical support line will be it's support@famictech.com. You can write an email or call us at 514-748-8050, and we'll be able to assist you as well. We thank you for your time this afternoon, and we wish you a pleasant day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.